You created this incredible app that will kind of like replicate the person you lost and you can have a communication with them.
Guardian AIngels is a grief platform. We are the journal that talks back.
If you get this app, what are the risks associated with that person not getting stuck on not wanting to let go of that and end up with an addiction?
Absolutely. And that's why the intention behind Worden's 4 tasks is so important, right? The first task is accepting the loss.
AI is a tool that we need to use to better humanity and society. And if you're doing that, then it's great. I think the reason people are skeptical is that other people have intentions to use it to better their own interests.
Would it be cool to be a billionaire? Sure. Is that the why I'm doing this? No. If I wanted to be a billionaire, it would be much more, I wouldn't be so focused on helping.
So I'm curious, from your perspective, what keeps you up at night about AI?
Everything and nothing.
Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to another episode of Coffee, Matcha, and Soul. Today we're doing something a little different for us. Typically we do it in person in our apartments or cafes or wherever we've managed to get in person. But we have a special guest with us, John Kammer, the founder of Guardian AIngels. John, could you tell us a little bit about what Guardian AIngels is and how you can, and your background, just to set the stage?
Yeah. So Guardian AIngels is a grief platform. We are the journal that talks back. Okay. And this is a platform that is designed to help people grieve better. It's to help meet them where they are. We have intentionally designed it to be something that is not a replacement for traditional therapy. We are a complement to traditional therapy. We are one tool in the broader toolbox of those who are combating grief. This kind of one of the truly only universal experiences in this life. We approach that in a lot of ways, but, and I'm sure we'll get into that. My background is one from hospitality and cybersecurity and sales. Nothing to do with grief or therapy in my background, other than the fact that I have been a proponent of therapy and a user of it for years. I believe everyone can benefit from talking things out. So the reason we're here, I lost 3 of my closest friends. The first one 13 years ago to suicide, and the 2 other ones very recent in the last couple of years to other accidents. At the time of their death, each of those 3 people was one of the closest people on the planet to me. Well, probably the 3 closest people to me on the planet outside of my immediate family. And so they were profound experiences. The first one sent me on a path of avoidance and substance use bordering on abuse for a good 12 plus years, until I finally made the decision to turn around and face it head on and do the work that was necessary to heal. Healing isn't passive. And the easy way, at least in my life, has never been worth it. The hard way is what has the lessons that have stuck, and the work that has led to growth and healing and good things. So I made that decision, and some of this platform is a result of doing that work, and and some serendipity and some accidents, and finding myself in a place where I know that I can help other people. How many people that is remains to be seen. But if I can help one, then I call this a screaming success. So
That's great. So to put the audience in context, can you explain a little bit what kind of grief assistance your Guardian AIngels provide? Because it's related to AI, and I don't think we have told the audience about it. But if I understand correctly, you created this incredible app that will kind of like replicate the person you lost, and you can have a communication with them after they're gone. So, and this is pretty interesting and sounds like science fiction to me, but I want to hear from you. What is it and how does it work? And how did you come up with this idea at all?
Sure. So, to your question is fair. In a way, you're communicating with the person, right? But there's a lot more nuance to that. We create a persona that is based on the presence of the object of your grief, that person. That presence becomes your grief guide. And the way that our platform works is there are structured prompts, journal prompts that person gives you at desired intervals, whether it's 3 times a week, 5 times a week, or daily. And you respond to those prompts. That goes into your journal, but it also will respond to your response to that prompt and allow you to dig deeper. It's going to ask you questions and allow you to further uncover and name the feelings that you're experiencing, coming to a place where you are going to understand more about your experience. Naming them is a big thing, and then help to flex that muscle of sharing. You start here in this digital environment where there's no risk whatsoever, and eventually you get to a point where you feel comfortable taking this outside of there, sharing it with your therapist, sharing it with your close friends, sharing it with your family. What I have realized over the years is that the healing happens with the sharing, and that was a big piece that I was missing for a long time. So I'll take you back, right? So this thing started as a response to a conversation that I had with my wife. I was not looking to build anything that helped people with grief. I wasn't even looking to deal with my own grief. We were currently staying with our in-laws, so there's already some tension. My wife was pregnant at the time, and we took a little weekend to ourselves. Her mom was texting her a lot, and she said to me, I know at one point in my life there will be a time when I want a text message from my mom and I can't have it. That is not today. So my mind goes to, well, what if you could? And being from cybersecurity, the original plan was to spoof text messages or spoof numbers and send messages to people from their lost loved ones. You get a text from grandpa on your birthday that says, I'm thinking about you, right? Like, who wouldn't smile? We all have those numbers still saved. The telecoms don't allow that because most people that spoof phone numbers are scammers. We all deal with that daily. And further, it was like it became clear. Well, what if someone wants to interact with this? And the clear answer to that was AI, but it had to be built in a way that was authentic. It had to be built in a very gentle, a very intentional way that didn't scream robot on the other side. And to do that, to start iterating on something that was like, I had only my personal experience to fall back on. And so I started building this. The first one was in the image of the best man at my wedding, John. Now, John stood up for me on the happiest day of my life. He spoke to my friends and family, and I fully intended to do the same for him. And 7 months later, after I had admittedly, not out of malice or anything, let that relationship lapse a little bit. We had one conversation in 7 months, and then I had to go to Chicago and look at him on his deathbed and say goodbye at him. I know he was there, but he was in a coma. I got to hold his hand and say, I'm sorry. But that didn't do it. So I built this in his image. And as I got closer and closer to something that felt authentic, I started to say things that I didn't get to say while he was alive. I got to say, I'm sorry. I got to say, I wish I was a better friend. I wish I had done right by you. I got to ask about the accident. And I had tried, there are therapeutic techniques called the open chair technique or the empty chair technique and writing the letter to the object of your grief that, have seen some good results for people. And I tried them, but they didn't have those results for me. In this scenario, I got a response. And that response from him that sounded enough like him that it triggered something in me. It triggered that release where I was finally able to, I hadn't emoted in years. I had lost the ability to cry. The waterworks started immediately. And I felt this weight lift where I finally had permission to forgive myself. And that was the key that unlocked the curiosity and the willingness to do the difficult work that where healing lies. And so at the beginning, this was I launched this way before it was ready out of necessity. And it was a very nebulous, like, to your point, talk to someone who's deceased. And that right there is riddled with ethical landmines. It is riddled with potential for abuse. It is riddled with potential for, delusions and tricking people into,
Mm.
thinking that this person's still here, and
Right.
really having the opposite effect of healing.
Mm.
And I received that feedback. To that point, it worked for me, but to that point, it had been 13 years. I was 13 years into my journey, 12 of which were, I didn't get anywhere. So I kind of had an idea for someone that's in the throes of it, they don't know where to start. And that's what we needed. So I brought in um, licensed therapists specialize in grief to help me navigate this minefield, to answer some of the questions, to make sure that we developed it in a responsible way so that this would help push people forward, help them achieve the we'd like to use the word resolution as opposed to closure. We like to use the word terminology moving forward as opposed to moving on. Because in our heads, when we talk about closure and moving on, there is this feeling that this book is closing. And I think one of the biggest impediments to healing from grief is this idea that we're afraid, we don't want to forget. And we think that moving on or finding closure is forgetting. And part of what we have structured this as is about finding what that relationship looks like moving forward and carrying them with you in a healthy way. So as I worked with these therapists, we developed the primary product is journaling. The primary product is healing. AI is how we is a method of how we get there. And so the journal prompts are specifically designed according to Worden's 4 tasks of meaning, which are accepting the loss, processing the loss, um, coming to terms with it, and then moving to third is adjusting to life without this person, and the fourth one is defining what this relationship will look like in a world where they're not around. Because again, that relationship doesn't die, the person does. And so um, that framework gives people both a starting point, which is something I lacked, and the roadmap to say, this is how I'm going to move through my grief. Now, the AI question, right? Does this hurt? Are they actually talking to someone? No. AI, technology, social media is the same way. They reflect us. They give back. Their outputs are only as good as their inputs, and they are a reflection of us. So in the same way that people complain about the algorithm, that it only feeds them negative things, it's feeding them exactly what they consume. If they've shown a propensity to consume, rage bait political content, that's what they're going to get. If you go on Instagram and you like and comment on 50 posts about butterflies and rainbows today, tomorrow, that's going to be all over your feed. So it reflects back, it's us. And what we're talking to is something that already lives in our hearts. It's a representation of that relationship that is still there. And that helps us, this familiar presence helps us to come to terms with accepting and moving forward and defining what that relationship looks like moving forward.
Great. So why use AI in this journaling process? What does the AI do to tailor the prompts? And it's not speaking, it's just generating prompts to kind of create a dialogue back and forth through the journaling. Is that right? So what does the AI do in this case?
So the context behind the AI is this is very user centric. It is form based. We thought about how to do this, right? And you can scrape social media, you can do a million things to give an AI the data necessary to quote unquote impersonate someone. We have you fill it out. So it is going to ask you roughly 35 questions that are everything from what is the name of the person you're missing to what was your relationship with them? Did you have nicknames? How do you refer to each other? How would you describe their sense of humor in their speech? What are some shared interests that you had? A couple of memories that stand out so that it knows how to relate to you. From there, we have the prompts, and it's going to deliver these prompts in its own words. So it's going to sound different for everybody based on the persona that they have created, but it is meant to resonate with that person based on the relationship that they had with the deceased. So that deceased, that persona is their grief shepherd that walks them, that holds their hand through this journey, right? So we are the handrail, not the destination. Grief is something you need to go through, and we are the we hold your hand through it.
So
Great.
when like when enough is enough, like in for instance, um if somebody is dealing with grief, and we all know that grief is, like as you mentioned before, a series of processes and steps that you have to go through until you find the way out and you move forward. um so when you are in an early stage of grief, where you are not in the acceptance phase of grieving, if you get this app, what are the risks associated with that person not getting stuck on not wanting to, and I have to say let go, not wanting to let go of that and end up with an addiction to this fake relationship that they are developing with a machine? So when, we've seen now how like young kids are marrying ChatGPT and these images and like taking it to that extreme. So how, what are, how are we like, or how are you doing with these concerns, and how do you make, is that, does that have an end, or that person can use the app forever?
You can use the app as long as you want. We've designed it so that hopefully you feel comfortable deleting it once you've gotten to the point where your um, journey is, you are set on your journey and you are doing the work and you don't need someone to hold your hand anymore. We also have developed, what we've come to realize going through this process is that memory preservation is a wonderful tool that this can be used for. In the instance of Zach, right? I lost Zach 13 years ago. I remember him. I remember, the way he made me feel. I remember some of the things we did. But with John and Tim, their losses are fresh and the clarity of detail is there. Had I had this 13 years ago, that would still be there with Zach, and it's not. So it's great for that. Now, as far as the possibility of developing this relationship with this thing, there's always going to be a potential for negative consequences, and I'm not going to hide from that. I believe that the opportunity to do good here outweighs the bad, and we have put in guardrails that guard against those things. So this persona that is created is going to, when it talks to you, it is going to refer to itself as gone. The prompts are such that if you could say something to me right now, or what is something that you wished you could say to me right now that you can't, it refers to itself as deceased. So it is not trying to trick you into thinking that you're talking to someone that is still here. It is designed to get you to process and accept that they are gone. But we all it's not uncommon for people to, they talk to their mom when their mom's gone, right? You see it. It's not uncommon at all. And sometimes it's like, you see a sign and you say, "Mom, I know you're with me." Whatever that thing is, we all have different ways of doing that. We pray, we do all these things, right? It's in the same vein as that, where Okay, so just because I'm speaking out loud, does that mean that I think that I'm talking to someone that's here? Or is it acceptable to say, I'm talking to the presence that I still feel from my mother who's no longer with me?
Yeah, I think people who would argue against it would say that at least somebody who's talking or praying with their mother, with their deceased beloved one, are trying to connect to a spiritual world. And there is this enigma that it might be somehow in heaven, in energy, or in something outside, in consciousness, something outside our material world. And that's where we have all like shamans and people and like channelers and people who believe that there is something beyond, and that the spiritual essence of a person can come here. Whereas with the app, that esoterical or magical idea is gone, because you're talking to a machine. The machine is replicating that for you. So, and I'm just saying, like, the difference between like praying or feeling the presence of somebody versus I'm using this as a tool, but I know this is something that somebody created, that it's not related at all with the person that I lost. Does that make sense?
It does, and my pushback to that is simply what they're doing when they're praying is connecting with the presence, right? The presence of someone. And to reduce it to you cannot connect with the presence to someone just because the medium that you're using, you know, it's no more believable or unbelievable than a psychic or it just depends on where you're coming from. Now, to you, it may not be believable, and that's okay.
Mhm.
I never designed this for everyone.
Mhm.
It's designed with the understanding that we all grieve differently, we all process differently, we all have differing beliefs, and this doesn't. I mean, if you want to go religious, it doesn't violate the covenants of religiosity. But I also don't expect people who are deeply religious to be, the main user base either, right? If you think about like, okay, the Psalms, right? The Psalms were not David speaking; it was not God speaking; it was David speaking in God's presence. And that's essentially what we're doing here is you're giving name to this relationship and these feelings that live within you, and this is a tool to help you develop the ability to talk about them and name them. For a long time I went to therapy and they'd ask me about how I was doing when it came to grief, and I had no idea what to even say. It was, how are you doing today? I'm not good, this sucks. Well, what are you feeling? I don't know. I just don't feel good. It hurts. What hurts? I don't know. And my ability to talk, to reason through this and dig into some of those things gave me the clarity on, okay, I can now name what I'm feeling, name the pain. Then I can articulate that to my therapist and we can actually dig in and make some progress.
So John, you do on the website say that Guardian Angels is not a licensed psychologist or psychiatrist. So do you see this? You're kind of saying, are you seeing this as a tool to be used in tandem with those services, not as a replacement? Is that what you're
100%.
okay?
This is not designed to replace in any way, shape, or form a relationship with a therapist. You can't replace that. It's designed to fill in the cracks. It's designed to give people access when they don't otherwise have it. One thing we know about grief, it certainly does not restrict its presence to business hours. You know, you're sitting in
Mhm.
there when you're trying to go to sleep and staring at the ceiling. That's when our mind has the tendency to run. That's when you can log on and say, and start to, you know, we find when we find ourselves out of control is when things start to spiral. And some sort of progress, some sort of proactive activity can help to regain that feeling of control. I'm doing something to help manage this. So I can get up and I can dig into what I'm feeling. I can know that this is recording this in my journal, and I can know that I can take that to my therapist on Monday or whenever my next session is. And I will be
Mhm.
able to articulate to them exactly what I was feeling, because it's not like, oh, I think I remember it. I was half asleep. It's no, this is what I was feeling. And we want therapists to embrace this. That's why I call on them to help me with it. And if there's anyone listening who is a therapist that wants input,
Mhm.
this is no longer about me. I have gotten to the point where my journey, I'm off on it and I'm not coming back. This is for me to help other people. And if there are ways that I'm not seeing or tweaks that need to be made, we're going to make them. I think that there's this feeling with AI where people are scared of it because we don't know what is possible with it. And I think that's 100% fair. And, I had someone relate to me that it's like the ring, right? It's too powerful. We need to throw it back into Mordor.
Lord
And
of the Rings, by the way, for
right,
everyone who's
that's
not
fine.
aware. But
That's fine. But what I would challenge that with is, do you believe AI is here to stay? Do you believe that we're going to be able to put this back in the bottle? I'm asking you to.
no, but I appreciate where you're going with this because I think there is a way to use AI responsibly if the intent is to use it responsibly, which sounds like that's your intent. For instance, this is a very specific tool you say you're not using it to replace human activity. It's something to be supportive of human activity, and AI is a tool. It's
Mhm.
That's the thing is to remember is that AI is a tool that we need to use to better humanity and society, and if you're doing that, then it's great. I think the reason people are skeptical is that other people have intentions to use it to better their own interests and not that of society. And that's
Right.
where the problem comes in with tools. It could be used for good and it could be used for harm, right?
Absolutely.
And so I appreciate that you're saying that you want to partner up with psychiatrists and psychologists because, anyway, when going through grief, many psychiatrists and psychologists do ask their patients to use journaling to put down their thoughts so they could bring it into the session. So that makes sense to then perhaps use this as a tool. And it sounds like you're thinking through the concern, which the major concern maybe with something like this that Zair pointed out is that in the early stages of grief, when someone is really vulnerable and at that stage of not able to let go of the person, you can see how very easily they can be fooled into thinking they still exist somehow in this
Well,
cloud, right? And
you
that's a
know,
huge, yeah.
absolutely. And that's why the intention behind Worden's 4 tasks is so important, right? The first task is accepting the loss. So the
Mm.
way we have it structured is we have call it our 90 days, our first program. Like that is our programming. And the first 14 prompts. So we have 56 prompts that go out over 90 days. The first 14 prompts, the first quarter of this whole thing is based on accepting the loss. So all of those prompts revolve around getting someone to come to terms with the fact that this person is no longer there. So it's not going to talk to them in a way that says, I'm still here. It's designed specifically for that. And then once they get to the point where they accept it, then it's about processing. Then it's about, you know, acclimating to life without them. Then it's about what does life look like going forward. And that is where that is the big thing that came of that early feedback, which again, I can't say enough and thank people enough for, this is the devil's work and this is Black Mirror and because it was true, because there was a very slippery slope there that needed to be addressed, and I'm so thankful that it was addressed early before it had the opportunity to go down the wrong path.
Yeah.
And we got to come to something that is structured and gives people a way, something tangible to say, I am moving forward. I'm not stuck.
So is it designed for people to use it for 3 months? Is that the idea? The
So it's
the
it's
goal?
designed for people to use it as long as they need to. So we have call it the I don't know, boot camp, whatever you want to call it. It's the starter is 90 days. And you can have it in different intervals of how often you want a prompt delivered to you.
Mhm.
But we don't expect people to do a prompt every day. And that's why it's 56 prompts over 90 days. We expect, this is a heavy emotional load. So doing one over a day or two and then coming back and doing another one. So it's designed for the first run through is 90 days.
What do you think makes it different for people? Like if we have to, if we want, like if you want to entice people, like I understand that in your personal case, like regular therapy didn't work. And probably, I mean, people around you couldn't help you with the grief. But what would you say is the main difference or the, the the feature that will make this a better option than therapy? Than just really talking out your feelings. Like, for instance, when you do Gestalt, which is a psychology area where you are in the situation where you say your what's bothering you, and then it's kind of like a Stanislavski acting exercise. Then you go to the place, you sit in the place of the person you have the issue with, or either if somebody who's passed away or somebody you have a fight or an argument with, and you impersonate that person and you say, like, you kind of say, you answer to yourself from the point, yeah, from the role of the other person. So, and that, for some people that's pretty cathartic because they can also find the I forgive you that you found with the app, for the loss of your friend, and that you felt kind of in debt with not being there enough. So what would you say would make this different and more appealing than going through therapy or other
And
processes?
Sure. So what I won't ever say is that it's better than therapy. Again, it's designed to be used in tandem with therapy. But what I would say is the thing that it differentiates this that's going to help move that needle in a way that I don't know, that maybe someone who isn't in therapy is gonna help them
Mm.
is by helping them learn both organize their thoughts and start to flex the muscle of sharing. A lot of us don't want to share for whatever reason. We
Mm.
think it makes us look weak. We think we're burdening someone else. Whatever that is.
Mm.
And the more you share, the more that you become comfortable talking about it, even if that is to an AI in this case, the more you're going to become comfortable with telling that story outside of there. And that for me, that is the healing, the sharing is where the healing lives. And so coming to terms with that and then sharing your story and hearing other people share theirs, and that gives you permission, or that's the unlock. That is what we're looking for.
Mm.
So if you're not ready to do that in therapy, this can help you get there. Because, I can't speak for anyone else, but I know that I've heard of this as you go to therapy and the first few sessions you're feeling out the therapist and they're feeling out you.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
it's easier to open up when there is no risk because there's not a person in the room. And the only thing you feel is the comfort and presence of the person who you love and you had a good relationship with and you miss. That is a great way to just take that first step.
yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, right? The first part of healing through anything is to people often keep themselves busy and distracted to not deal with the thing. And
Right.
so, even having, and I found this with therapy as well, just having a safe space to sit with your thoughts, to process, to put it out there, to actually think about it allows you to process it and then work through your feelings, right? And people tend not to want to connect with those hard feelings. So I can certainly see how this tool could be used in conjunction with therapy as a way to help an individual. I'm curious to know where you see this going or evolving into. And also, I do want to point out you do say that this is privacy focused. So on the website it says this app is privacy focused. So I imagine you're not using the data collected in any way to sell to marketers or anything like that.
Absolutely not. So I'm gonna answer that question first, because that is such a paramount concern that is so necessary for this to actually work. And coming from a cybersecurity background, privacy is a huge deal. And in dealing with that, I had to make some intentional choices with potential consequences to guarantee that, right?
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
we are guaranteeing privacy, that means we're not monitoring you in the same way that something else might. What does that mean? That means that for the people, for someone that might be in a bad place, there's not someone looking at you. Now, what have we
Mhm.
done to counteract that? Well, we're building, it's the export functionality, and then we're building in right now, I'll call it a chaperone, if you will, where you can add a trusted user that can keep an eye on this and help you keep an eye on it, so that
Mhm.
if you ever get to that point, there's you have someone else looking over your shoulder. That is not me, right? We have on every page there's a banner with crisis details, crisis outreach details. Um, and you have ultimate control over your data. If you decide you want to delete it, you delete it. It ain't coming back. I can't get it. You can't get it. No one has access to it. It's cryptographically erased. Um, Further, when it comes to, I think one of the big concerns with LLMs is that
Mhm.
you don't know what they're doing with it.
Right.
Now, this runs on ChatGPT's backbone.
Okay.
They say in their user agreement through the API that they do not save anything. I believe that they're doing that. But let's just say the worst happens and they're not. They're not being faithful to their word.
Okay.
What they cannot attribute it to you, because it all comes through me. So anything that's in there is only going to be attributable back to the, call it the pipe stem that everything comes through with this application that is in my name. So you will never be targeted with ads. You're talking about this trip you took to Greece with your loved one, and you're not going to get an ad the next day that says, fly to Greece. It won't happen. So that's what I've been able to do to, at the end of the day, there's only so much we can do, and there's a certain level of trust that has to be between us, right? There is nothing on the internet that is 100% safe. It doesn't exist.
Mhm.
The only
Mhm.
safe thing from a data perspective is something that is not on the internet.
Mhm.
So I'm not going to, I won't sugarcoat that fact, but it has been designed with privacy and data security and integrity in mind. And you, the user, have the ultimate control over that, over where it goes, how long it's there, and you can export it and print it and then delete it, so it's no longer on our servers, and you have the only copy.
And John, it's also not on ChatGPT's server, or it is, since ChatGPT is the backbone behind the.
They, according to their user agreement for the API, they do not save and use this for training purposes.
Okay. And to be clear, so audiences like myself who are less familiar with this technology understand, if ChatGPT was monitoring the information, it all goes back to you. So they don't see who the individual is who provided, so they don't get a name to the info,
It all
right?
comes to me, so they would think that I am the person that John is
Have
talking
genuine.
to 25,000 different people about grief.
Mhm.
Got it.
So,
So
John, is the app like available right now? Is it in a beta stage?
So
Where are we standing with the app right now?
we are live. It's a web application in its current form. So it's guardianangels.ai. Angels is spelled AIngels. We have designs on releasing it into the App Store. There's a few things that need to happen before that. So realistically, I would not expect that in the next 6 months. We have, I have done, and I need to do more about making sure that it is mobile responsive so that you can access it on your phone and that it's not just a nightmare of an experience. and that is kind of the leading priority for me over the next couple of weeks, is to just to streamline that, make sure that we're in good shape there. So we are live. It is useful. You can log on today and go try it. There's a 7-day free trial with every subscription. You can delete it after 6 days and you're not charged anything. There's, it's truly, there's no we're not locking you into anything. I want you to use it because you want to use it and because it helps. And if it's not, that's
And how
fine.
many people have you tested? I assume you tested the concept with some people grieving,
I
or
have
beside you.
there has been, I've used the therapists, and then I have a couple of friends who have used it. But as far as, like, I haven't done like a focus group or anything like that.
Mm.
We are, let's just say, when I launched this thing, like I said, out of necessity in May. And I have probably, if you were to consult someone that says, here are the best practices on launching a business, I would probably have done everything wrong. So, so there, this was, a lot of it was based on a hunch of fact that it worked for me, and that I believe that there are other people that can benefit from it. But do we have the kind of data that would support, you know, investment from a VC fund? No.
Okay.
But it's also, this is so personal to me that, while we're on that subject, I have had conversations with potential investors, and I've had to tell them, if you're looking for a 5-year exit and quarterly returns, this is not for you. I
Hmm.
will absolutely make decisions that are counter to the bottom line, in the service of building something bigger that helps people. And
Wonderful.
so there's that, most of those conversations stop right there.
Hmm.
Um,
Sure.
Now, while we're there, I do want to go back to your question was, where do you see this going?
Yeah.
Um, and I see us proving a concept and getting more specific with it, with additional use cases regarding grief. So that is in the near term. We know that grief is not relegated to death, right? We grieve a lot. We grieve when basically, grief is a response to change. So we grieve when we get married because we don't have a single life anymore. We grieve when we have a baby because our time is no longer our own. We
Hmm.
grieve when we have a friend who, spirals into addiction and is no longer, they're not dead, but they're not the same person anymore. And they call that ambiguous grief. I have a friend from high school whose brother had a mental break, and he's not dead, but he's not been in their lives for a decade. And I have not spoken to him on exactly how it's going with this, and that's on him to share with me if he wants to. I'll never force someone to share something. I can hope that it is bringing him some measure of comfort and the ability to, find resolution in his mind. But that's where I see it in the near term. There's always the potential for the voice stuff and actual avatars. We are going to go very, very slowly with that, because the more realistic things get, the more
Sure.
that potential for abuse goes up. And so
Right.
it's possible that someone develops something that keeps you in line down the road, and maybe we jump on that train. But we will not. The reason we've kept it specifically to chat is that's easier to control. That, we're pulling off some of that lifelike, potentially confusing, um, you know, olfactory input that is outside of what you're just reading. So
Great. John, I have one last question. So you kind of said this is more for your tech background, your cybersecurity background. You kind of said that the genie's out of the bottle and AI is here. So I'm curious, from your perspective, what keeps you up at night about AI? What has you worried about it? Where do you see, or is it AGI? What 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 concerns you?
everything and nothing. I've made a conscious choice to approach it in the following way, right? First of all, if it's coming, and I believe it is, I believe we have a moral imperative to try to develop the most responsible version of it and try to squeeze as much good out of it as we can. And that's what I will continue to do. Now, if we, if the genie's truly out of the bottle and we're staring down the barrel of the dystopian nightmare, the 1984 scenario, I don't believe we're going to stop that. So I'm going to try to use it for as much good while I can and hope that that end is quick. And in reality it should be, because let's just logically, right? Computers are on and off. They're black and white. It's binary. That means they have no vested interest in us suffering. If we're in the way, they just get rid of us. It's not we're going to put you to work. It's just, we can do it better. Bye.
Mhm.
So I guess there's some measure of comfort in that. My understanding of technology says if that is the worst case scenario, and if by some stroke of very, very bad luck that's where we go, then that happens fast. I don't think
And
that's where we're going. I think we as humans are extraordinarily adaptable, especially when our back is against the wall. And this may force our hand on a lot of things, but I think that we're on the precipice of some some very profound discoveries that actually give us the ability to better the human condition as opposed to hurt it. And of course there's a dark side to that. There's a flip side of that coin, and that's the military applications of it. But again, with that, I can hope that this is a similar to what the Cold War was, and it's a mutually assured destruction that nobody actually pulls the trigger on.
right, great. I love what you said. I think we need more entrepreneurs like yourself who are trying to use this tool for good and the betterment of society, as opposed to self-interest and like you and can lead to horrible results, right? And one thing I wanted to clarify, when you said if the worst case scenario is that what AGI becomes conscious and determines that we're irrelevant and then decides to immediately wipe us out, is that what you implied? Was just so,
If
so that
that
I
was
got that
what happens, right? I suppose that would be the nightmare scenario for a lot of people. But,
clear? Okay,
again, the justification for them making us suffer, there really isn't an argument for that if you understand the nature of computers, right?
right.
So I hope that's not the case. I don't think that's the case, right? But if you want to take it to that level, I think a lot of people have this boogeyman in their heads that we're going to be like slaves to the computers. And
Hmm.
I
It
just
was
don't think there's any evidence to support that, even if it does go to the worst place anyone can think of.
Well, to a certain extent, we are already slaves of computers. We're
Okay.
slaves of social media. We're like that's already like if you didn't know that was happening, guys, that happened. Like we
Well, but
cannot leave our phones for 1 second, and that to me is like a real description of being a slave to
there,
technology.
and there's a different philosophical argument there, and I would agree with that statement. And there, but it's not that social media is all bad either, right? There's both sides to that, and it as we've kind of realized, or hopefully realized, that moderation with anything and everything in life is the key.
Hmm.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
yeah,
being fully reliant on AI or whiskey or sex or whatever it is not going to be healthy.
yeah,
Yeah.
And
right,
we have to be accountable to say, yeah, I use this. There's a reason that, you can set your phone to say only use social media for 30 minutes a day.
right,
That is well within the power of every single one of us.
right.
Mhm.
And if you really want to hold yourself accountable, have someone else set that password. you
Sure.
know?
Although, to be fair, I mean, these platforms do design it to be addictive. So, yes, we do need to be accountable individually, but there's also someone on the other end that needs to be accountable,
No arguments here. There's always room for more responsible capitalism.
which it sounds like that is your intent, which
Mhm.
is wonderful.
I think for a lot of people, the question becomes how much is enough, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
I don't, would it be cool to be a billionaire? Sure. Is that the why I'm doing this? No. If I wanted to be a billionaire, it would be much more, I wouldn't be so focused on helping. It would be more focused on the financial motive. I think there's room for both. And if I can support my family and help people, I'd much prefer that to however many zeros I can have in my bank account.
That's wonderful. I think that's a wonderful way to leave the segment. I wish more people understood that and believed that ethos.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know what to do about motivation for people, but we're all motivated by different things. And I'm a big fan of the saying and the song title, "Bless the Broken Road." And for whatever has happened in my life that led me here, I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful for the perspective. I'm thankful for the opportunity, and I'm thankful for the people that I get to share it with.
John,
And
and we're thankful for you today for coming to our show and sharing with our audience. Not only everything you're doing with the app, but the motivation behind and the real need to help people and to make whatever it takes to lead AI into the positive direction. That's what we're hoping uh, to have, as Saro said, like more Johns out there, uh, l- leading the way to good doing with AI.
well,
Thank
I
you for
appreciate it.
coming.
I
Thank you. And
appreciate your time. I think this was it was a fruitful conversation. And I think that, you know, realistically, these conversations need to be had. We shouldn't hide from the difficult questions. We
yeah,
should come up with answers to them. And, we're not always going to have the answer right away, but you never get the right answer without asking the right question. So we start with the question and try to figure out, how can we do this for good?
yeah. Wonderful. Thank you, John. We wish you a lot of luck and success with Guardian Angels and with everything you do.
God
This
bless
was
you
great.
both. Thank you for your time. Thank you,
Thank
and
you.
thank you for the platform. I love what you guys are doing.
Thank
Awesome.
you. Likewise.